Okay, we've already got AWS CLI installed and configured. So the first thing we need to do is install kubectl. You can find the detailed instructions on the Kubernetes documentation site. You can find kubectl in a few locations as a downloadable binary, but I prefer to install it using yum on my desktop so that a yum update will catch any new versions. First, you need to su to root. Then we'll need to add the Kubernetes repo to etc yum repos.d. Then we'll use yum to install kubectl. After that is done, we'll download eksctl from the Weaveworks GitHub repo and move it to user local bin directory. The exact URL is mentioned in the AWS documentation. Finally, we'll drop to user level and issue the command eksctl create cluster to spin up our first Kubernetes cluster. There are a lot of options available in the eksctl create cluster command. In this case, since we're just testing, we're going to specify the node type as being T2 micro so that we can stay in mostly the free tier. If you don't specify the node type, it'll default to spinning up two M5 large EC2 nodes. The eksctl readme page has more details on the defaults. Anyway, this will take about 10-15 minutes to complete. If you want to check the build status, you can always check CloudFormation using the command AWS CloudFormation describe stacks. In this case, I happen to have another terminal window open. And I'll just drop it in here so we can see it in the background. You can also check the status of the EC2 instances that have been deployed after CloudFormation gets done doing its thing a little bit. Yeah, we don't see any up right now. If you give it a few minutes, they'll show up. If you get an error message during the build about there being insufficient resources, you might need to explicitly specify which availability zones you want to use instead of letting it default to auto-select, or you'll just want to pick a new region. At least for testing purposes, anyway. All right, so it has been about 15 minutes, give or take a few minutes. And if we go back and we look, we can see that CloudFormation shows that everything's been completed. Text is a little bit big on this one. And we can see that all the EC2 instances are running. So let's go ahead and verify that the cluster is up. We'll go ahead and issue the command kubectl get svc. And we see the cluster is up and running. So now, finally, now that we've verified the cluster is up, I'm going to delete the cluster. Normally, we'd leave the cluster up, but I didn't want to show you how to create a cluster without mentioning how to delete it. Just issue the command eksctl delete cluster with the region and the name of your cluster. In this case, the eksctl program has chosen the cluster name Exciting Sheepdog for us. So that's the name we're going to use. It'll take about 2 or 3 minutes for you to get your prompt back, and about 10 to 15 minutes for CloudFormation to finish tearing down the cluster and all the related resources.